Welcome to another episode. We're on episode 9 of the Supernatural Through His Word, and we are going through Genesis 12 today, the call of Abram. We're continuing on. It's been a while. I know there's been a lot of stuff going on with me. My dad just passed away last week. We had a lot of health issues going on, so a lot of my podcasts were intermittent. But now I have some time, a little bit, I decided to jump back in and get these podcasts rolling. So I was pretty excited about the momentum I had with them. So we're diving back in today to Genesis chapter 12. Pull up those PowerPoints. Genesis 12, Supernatural Through His Word. I'm your host, Reverend Michael Norton, and today we're going to look at some pretty cool stuff here. So what's going on in Genesis 12? God calls Abraham. We see God not giving up on humanity. Again, we'll cover this. We'll do a little recap here. God is patient with us, and God works to restore his Edenic vision and bring restoration back to the 70 nations. If you're just joining us today, you're probably going, what the heck are you talking about? What's God not patient with about? What happened with Abram? And how did we get here? Well, I'm kind of glad you asked that. Let's do a quick recap on where we're at, guys. Our previous episode, we looked at Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel. Here's where humanity disobeyed God and unified amongst themselves and not under God in Babylon. And they united and organized themselves into the plain in the valley of Shinar and built the Tower of Babel and built the great city of Babylon. As I recall, the city of Babylon was also built through violence and through bloodshed, and the ground was crying out to God too. He had to do something about it. Now, when they built the Tower of Babel, mankind decided to elevate himself above God. Again, he didn't want to wait. Mankind did not want to wait for God to raise himself up. So they built this tower and said, we'll rise above you and we'll do greater things than you, God. So God goes, oh, no, you're not. I'm God and you're not. You're my creation. So in Genesis 11, God divided the 70 nations amongst the sons of God, the Bein Elohim. God kept one nation for himself from the bloodline of Eber, which was the short version of Hebrew, from the descendants of Shem. Remember Noah's sons? He had 3 sons there. Was it Shem, Ham, and Japheth? So let's look at these. Real quick. So we covered 11 chapters so far in the Supernatural Through His Word. And as I put together those 11 chapters in Genesis, a lot of stuff was coming up, bubbling up in my brain. I was doing the episodes. It was kind of like doing my initial homework. I put out a book since then, in the past month. It's Cosmology and Demonology in Genesis 1 through 11. I encourage you guys to pick this all up because it's the groundwork of what we've been talking about so far. It's been compiled. There's a lot deeper research, put a lot of things together we were talking about. I covered stuff rather quickly. It's available from Amazon.com, or you can go to my Field Guided Spiritual Warfare website, which is an acronym, AFG2SW.com. You can see it on the PowerPoints here if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube. That's Alice Frank Golf 2 Stacy Wyoming.com. AFG 2 SW.com is the home website for fieldguidespiritualwarfare.com. This website is kind of be my temporary website. I'm trying to get a lot of things revamped and going. I still have M16Ministries.com, but that site is so old. I totally want to revamp it to where I'm at now, where the ministry's at now. It's kind of behind by about 10 years. It's time to redo that. So right now, a lot of my focal point stuff is going to be at afg2sw.com until I get M16 Ministries up to speed. So I encourage you guys to go there, look at the book, buy the book, help me out. I love you if you did. And there's a lot of good stuff in here, a lot of good recap on what's happening. So the Elohim are now the regional spirits that have the the 69 tribes, because one goes with one nations, the table nations goes with Yahweh. Adonai is what we should say. If we're using the Hebrew, we got to use Adonai as the true name. So Genesis 11 recap. Continued. From this bloodline came the generations of Terah. Okay, so we're jumping ahead. Who is Abram? How do we define him? His bloodline was actually defined from the descendants of Shem in Genesis 11. And from that bloodline, from Shem down to Terah, we have Genesis 11, verse 27. Now, these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Verse 28, Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred in Ur of the Chaldeans. They're in Babylon. Verse 29, and Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran of the father of Milcah and Ishkah. Verse 30, now Sarai was barren. She had no child. This is the ongoing story we're going to have here. And this is going to be the conflict going on with Abram, and they're barren, and how God comes in to help them, and they take matters in their own hands. I want to reiterate that as we go through Genesis, we're going to see a recurring motif, a recurring theme, where man takes things in his own hands and usurps God. We saw it with Adam and Eve. We don't know if God was going to eventually let us, go to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but we usurped his authority, and we took from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We're going to see the same thing here with Abram and Sarai when they are promised a child from God, Isaac, and they usurp his authority, and they don't wait on him to do his miracle, and they go to Hagar and do it on their own. Again, they took from Hagar what God had promised. You see this whole motif building of how man handles things. We don't wait for God, we go and we take. We saw the same thing in Genesis 6 with the Nephilim. We were discussing that. The Nephilim took earthly women for their wives. This whole thing where we rebel against God and we take in our own nature. And that's the recurring theme we're going to see a lot here in Genesis. And of course, Genesis 12, starting with Abram and Sarai, is going to be no different. They're not going to wait on God. They're going to do things their way and get themselves in trouble quite often. So verse 31, Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son's Abram's wife, and they went forth from Ur to the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Verse 32, the days of Terah were 205, and Terah died in Haran. So they came up and out of the land of Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. That's where they sit now. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Got that? So their journey was to Canaan, but they came to Haran and they settled there. They didn't make it to Canaan yet. So that brings us currently to where we're at in Genesis 12, the call of Abraham. Let's take a look at what's going on in Genesis 12 here. So God intends to restore his Edenic vision with humanity by calling out the pagan Abram and his wife Sarai from Babylon, which was Ur of the Chaldeans. In the Edenic motif throughout the book of Genesis, Abram and Sarai are the Adam and Eve figures in this narrative. God is going to restore humanity, the divided nations, through Abram, and God blesses Abram just as he blessed Adam in the Garden of Eden. Remember that? God was blessing Adam this. You go forth and multiply, be fruitful, all this stuff, right? And same thing we're going to see here. God's going to bless him again. God's going to give the blessings of his new elected people to participate as the forebearers of his Edenic vision to jumpstart it here. He didn't give up on humanity. He didn't. Probably just rolled his eyes and go, here we go again. One of these guys ever going to learn. Genesis 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you'll be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you and all the families of the earth shall be blessed. This is God's promise and his blessing. We need to understand this and remember Genesis 12:3, because it's going to come up and bite us in a really weird way at the end of Genesis 12 here. But I want to go back and look at the Hebrew. There's some interesting stuff here. So here we go. Here's the breakdown of Hebrew. I've been, like, as you guys have noticed, I've been probably tuning in, learning Hebrew the past 9 months. So I kind of want to start implementing what's being read here to pick up on how do we know this stuff, how do we know the translations, and just to let you guys kind of get get your feet wet in this stuff. So in Hebrew, we read right to left. So I have to do the math in my head because it's a mirror to the camera. We're reading that direction. Yeah. Start at the right and read that direction. So the top line in Hebrew reads Vav Yomer. The next word into that is Jehovah. El Avram. That's Abraham right there. Leka Lek. So reading it backwards. So now we have to read the English going from left to right. It doesn't make sense, right? So let's read it backwards here. So we're going to start with now he said, Adonai. Who said it? Adonai said it. He said it to Abram. Get out of there. Next line. Mirtzka umuladataka umbit. And from thy country and from thy kindred and from thy house, he wants you to leave. Next line. Avikma el Haaretz Asher Arka. From thy father unto thy land that I will show thee. Got that? That's the basic Hebrew right there. Good stuff there. Good stuff. It takes a while to get to it. There's some words there. I'm kind of disappointed because when I laid out this PowerPoint slide, I had all the words aligned properly underneath the Hebrew, and it looks like when it made the JPEG or something to make these slides, it offset it for me. So Jehovah is kind of offset. I wanted to see that. Jehovah, it's actually slide Jehovah and Adonai, the top line, more over to your right. It's offset. It's under the word El. There's Aleph, Lamech, right there, hyphen Avram, Aleph, Bet, Resh, Mem is Abram. Notice there's a V there. If you're learning Hebrew right now, look at the word, the Bet, right? That's use a letter B. There's no Dagesh in Bet right now. There's a Shava underneath it. There's Aleph next to it. Bet, so it's pronounced a V. So Abram, we could say Abram, but it's Avram. The name's Avram. It's a V. Interesting stuff here. I think I have a slide 2. I did the breakdown for you guys. Let's take a look at that. Leave that up a second. And that's kind of how I did the breakdown. I found it online and then just printed it out and just took my red pen to it and translated it. Look down where you see earth. There's a word Ertz right there. Aleph, Resh, Sadi. Ertz, that's a common word you got to pick up. Jehovah up top. Second word to the right. Yod, He, Vav. He is Jehovah, which you pronounce Adonai. Those are just common words you'll pick up as you start learning this. And Father down at the bottom. The very first 2 letters. Aleph, Bet, Av, that's Father. That's on the 3rd line down. Close to the right, the first 2 characters are Aleph, Bet. Good stuff there. Let's continue on. Now let's go back to what we're doing here. Let's proceed on to Genesis 12, verse 4. So Abram went as far as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Verse 5. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, verse 6, Abram passed through the land of the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At the time the Canaanites were in the land. Verse 7. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. Okay, this is important. Remember that Noah did the same thing. He submitted to God and built an altar. That was a sign of submitting, building an altar. Adam didn't do that. Adam got in trouble. So submit, that's an important key word right there, a key action that Abram is doing right now. He is submitting to God. Verse 8. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward Negeb. So I want to go back and look at, what is verse 7 here? Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I'll give this land. Okay, so let's do the Hebrew breakdown. Here we go. Vav Yara starts off. He kind of talks like Yoda. If you want to understand Hebrew, appeared to Yoda. He did. If you pick it up that way, that's how we're translating. So we have Vav Yara, appeared, and there's another word we were talking about to memorize. Yod He Vav He is Jehovah, and that is Adonai. That's God. El Abram. So appeared Adonai to Abram and said. So it's kind of reading right to left here. Shem, Zark, Ethan, Eretz. See, there's land there. There's land. It appears again. You'll see land a lot. It's a good word to memorize. Aleph, Resh, Sadi. Etz makes an etz sound. That Sadi, that funky Y makes an etz sound. Hazat. So there thy seed, I will give this land to this. So he built, right? So he built an altar. I didn't go through the whole thing there. That's where Bab Yeven. So he built. All right, you following along here? So we have Adonai and Abram. Cool stuff. It's just I want you to see the direct translation. Sometimes we see stuff here that, you know, how they get these words, and there it is right there. We broke it down kind of word by word, a direct translation. I am not doing a passion translation here. I am doing direct correlation translation into English. That's why it's kind of sounds Yodanese, right? Appeared Adonai to Abram and said. It sounds like Yoda, but that's kind of like how Hebrew flows. You gotta pick up on it in your mind. Abram, Sarai, and Egypt. Verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. Verse 11. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai his wife, I know that you're a woman beautiful in appearance. Verse 12. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Verse 13. Say you're my sister. That way it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. He's a weasel. He's weaseling out. Weasel Abram. 14. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Verse 15. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. Verse 16. And for her sake, he dealt with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. Good trade. Verse 17. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh with his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Go back to Genesis 12:3. I will curse anybody who comes in harm's way with Abram. However, Abram managed to put God in a double bind. God wasn't in a double bind. However, God followed through in his promise. Abram lied to the Pharaoh of Egypt. And in doing so, cursed the Pharaoh of Egypt. You following along here? So Abram lied to Pharaoh, and God's going to step in now, and God's going to enforce whatever's going on here, right? It's not cool. So, but the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Abram's like, what the heck's going on here, God? He goes, hey, I'm not, we don't think like God thinks, right? We don't know how a compliment or how he thinks. So God just kind of came in backhanded and protected and Abram through a blessing, even though he was lying to Pharaoh's face, and cursed Pharaoh. So interesting. So let's look at chapter 12, verse 17 in Hebrew. Remember reading right to left, top line. Va nega. I believe nega is plagued. So va nega and plagued. There's Jehovah, right? Memorize that again. Yod, he, vav, he. Jehovah, Adonai, et. And then we see pe, resh, he, which is paro, or in our language, Pharaoh. Pharaoh, excuse me, is in our language Pharaoh. And then we see Negalem, which is with plagues. Again, we see the word, looks like the noon, legem, plague. And the plural version is, so I believe it's Nagalim. So it should be Nagalim, is a male plural version of plagues. This is in Hebrew where he plagued him, the Pharaoh, with plagues, if you want to read it that way. Gedlohim, great, vet, and beto, his house, because of his word. I believe Dabar, they didn't have, in the Blue Letter Bible, they didn't have the translation for Daget Bet Resh. I believe it's Dabar word, because of his word, Sarai and his wife, Abrams. So I believe it's because of his word to them, he brought the plague. Very cool stuff. There it is in Masoretic Hebrew, guys. So Pharaoh called Abraham and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife?" Verse 19. "Why did you say, she is my sister? So I took her for my wife. Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Verse 20. "And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all he'd had." Interesting. God just keeps sending plagues against Pharaoh and Egypt, right? So it's just, there it is right there. Yeah. God's got something against Egypt. Maybe it's could be one of the Elohims down there he can't stand. And he just go, "I'm going to send plagues into this guy again after the dividing of nations." So there we are. So Genesis 12, concluding thoughts. Concluding thoughts in Genesis 12. Again, we're setting up, God is realigning mankind to the Hebrew nation through the election of Abram, his Edenic vision to restore it and to restore the nations. He divided the nations because it was a punitive measure, because we were being naughty. We weren't doing what he was saying. We were making our own gods, elevating ourselves to gods. And he just goes, "Fine, I'll make a selection of my own people through Eber, the Hebrews, and start with my nation. I'll begin restoring them through the timeline of Jesus bringing full restoration and all the way through Revelation." So the Edenic story is still playing out as we see restoration of nations. And that's God's major plan. So next time when we visit supernatural through his word, we're going to be in Genesis 13, where Abram and Lot separate. That's not such a good idea in those lands, huh? I wouldn't separate. Stick together, guys. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the Hebrew and the analysis of it. I think it brings more meaning to it. So if I say stuff regarding the supernatural, like when the Lord appeared, a lot of times we'll have like the NIV version or some other guy translating and will say, "Oh, it didn't really appear. That's just a metaphor." But no, you saw it for real in Hebrew. The Lord appeared to Abram. And I just want you to walk away with that and start building your vocabulary. We learned Ertz, right? We learned Jehovah, Abram and Sarai. Now go back, look at those slides and just commit words to memory there. I didn't go through the punctuations. I could probably do it later or something. Maybe we have some easier sentences to go through on there's masculine, feminine, there's all sorts of stuff. The language gets complicated, but should be able just to pick up and glean words by looking at what we did, like the Elohim, see stuff like that. Plagues, Negahim, with the Sharek, Yod, Mem, makes an im sound. It's male, masculine, plural. Stuff like that you can start learning. If not, just stick with me and I'll just keep it easy. I mean, this isn't intended to be a learning course in Hebrew. I just want to break down and show you some of the stuff that's kind of cool that I've been learning, and to break it into supernatural through his word where this stuff applies because it's written in Hebrew, Masoretic Hebrew. And let's just enjoy what the God's doing through his supernatural. So if you're tuning in for the first time, thank you. We do have, like I said, other episodes that go Genesis chapter 1 through 11. I invite you to go back and look at those. I also did a more advanced compilation, almost like a dissertation on what's going on through this supernatural realm of cosmology and demonology of Genesis 1 through 11. I put that out in my book. Again, it's called Cosmology and Demonology in Genesis 1 through 11. I encourage you guys to pick it up. It's some good reading, and it's going to help you guys move forward and understand what's going on in the heavenly realms as we discuss more complicated things in God's supernatural realm. So until next time, guys, and I will post this on the M16 Ministries blogspot.com. Or again, you can probably also go to AFG 2SW, that's the number 2, AFG number 2SW.com, and look there under the podcast and stuff. And all the podcasts are listed there. St. Teresa of Avila, the Tales of Glory, and also these. So I hope you guys had a great time. This is good, some Bible stuff, learning stuff here to go through and just to, better yourselves. So you guys are amazing. I know we're getting out to different countries now. It's kind of cool. So love you guys. And I hope to put out more material now. I may have some more time to do this. And God bless. You guys are amazing. Keep at it. Keep those Bible studies up. Amen. Signing off from the M16 headquarters bunker. God bless.
Beautiful among thousands and thousands, Yeshua. Yeshua, 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 Yesh